For the AZ people, the meeting was a means of not only gaining time, but also of learning the position of government soldiers. Because of the intelligence received soon after by the commanding officer, an attack was launched by the government forces later in the day. This attack met considerably more opposition than had been anticipated. However, by late afternoon, the resistance had awakened and the town was burned down. The town of AZ was burned down by the British. We are reading a colonial account written by the British themselves, documented in their gazettes, and then published by Professor S.N. Wabara, a renowned historian. We have now moved, the resistance has now moved from AZ to Ogwashuku after capturing Dunku in AZ. Dunku is one of the Ekumeku warriors who was captured in AZ, and I said AZ is an Ezechima community in Anyocha North local government area of Delta State, no more than 5 minutes drive from Iseluku. On the 16th of December 1902, the main column of the army entered Iseluku. On the 18th, they reached Ogwashuku. Something is missing here, okay? That thing missing is that there's a community between Iseluku and Ogwashuku. That community was avoided for a reason. You will know that community later as well, and why it was avoided, because it's a no-go area. That community that was avoided is a no-go area. So how this contingent moved from Iseluku and found themselves in Ogwashuku without accessing that community is what still remains a mystery in this documentation. So something is missing here. How you moved from Ogwash and landed, how you moved from AZ to Iseluku and then landed in Ogwash without documenting what happened in Ubuluku, the headquarters of Ekumeku. The actual headquarters of Ekumeku is Ubuluku. So how did you move from Iseluku to Ogwash without touching base at Ubuluku? How Ndi Igbo resisted the British Nigerian government. During the early days of colonization, our first European contact, how the resistance and defiance of Ndi Igbo became global knowledge, how the world got to know that Ndi Igbo in Nigeria are not people you can push around. I'm going to not just make this about myself, but I'm going to make this about intellectuals. It is an intellectual topic, and therefore, good morning, my brother who is watching from Switzerland. This is an international topic, so it is going to be a topic whereby we will employ every academic means to make it an intellectual discussion. Of course, it is an intellectual discussion. So we're going to have an intellectual engagement. I have two books with me. I have the book called Igbo Land, A Century of Contact with the Europeans. A Century of European Contact. Igbo Land, A Century of European Contact. That is a book written by our brother, Professor S.N. Wabara. And then another book called The Story of Obolo Kingdom, a historical documentary of Obolo people. With these two books, we're going to look at the resistance of Ndi Igbo against the Europeans. We're going to focus on the Igbo axis of Asaba and other Enuane communities. I am beginning here with what they called Asaba Onitsha expedition. Now, a lot of people, when they hear about the British expeditions in Nigeria, they usually think of Benin expedition of 1897, of the punitive expedition. They never know that before the punitive expedition of Benin, these people had already touched base at Igbo land, but they were not able to conquer Ndi Igbo. even if it took just less than 4 days to subdue Benin and dethrone the Oba of Oranwe. It took 32 years plus before they were able to subdue Igbo. Let's dive into this. And then after this live broadcast, I'm going to make a video, okay, so that everything can be balanced, where you can watch this exclusively and even read from the books I'm using. I'm reading now from a book written by Professor S.N. Wabara, Igbo Land, A Century of Contact. The Asaba Onitsha expedition was one of the few cases where the term pacification could partly apply, because in each case, the aim was to destroy a secret society or an oracle that constituted a terror and danger not only to the foreigners but also to the natives. Resistance by the members of the society, therefore, was, as in the Umunoha case, economically and selfishly motivated. Information had reached W.F. Forsbury, Provisional Commissioner of the Eastern Province, that the towns of Ogwasi and Onitsha Olona were centers of resistance and the headquarters of the Ekumeku Society. First, on the authorization of the High Commissioner of the Southern Nigeria, the following force left the hinterland on 1st of December 1902. Now I want to clarify something here. These two places mentioned, Ogwashi and Onitsha Olona, are sub-headquarters of Ekumeku Resistance. The actual headquarters of Ekumeku Resistance was not mentioned here, probably because of the reason Ekumeku. Everybody was sworn to an oath not to reveal where the headquarters is. So I am not surprised here reading that the information that went out is that the headquarters is in Ogwashi and Onitsha Olona. Actually, the headquarters is in a place I will later mention. Just continue watching this video. You will find out where the true headquarters of Ekumeku is. That headquarters of Ekumeku is still there till date, and it is still a virgin forest. So let's continue this reading. Now they have decided to dispatch an army to Igbo land part of Asaba and Ogwashi. This time they are targeting Ogwashi Ukwu and Onitsha Olona under the Asaba division. The commanding officer of this particular expedition is Major Morehouse. He had with him 1 medium machine gun, a Lieutenant Bodman Wetham, 10 gunners, and 31 enlisted gun carriers. Now, a company Southern Nigeria regiment also went with them. They had with them Captain Beverly, Lieutenant Whitehead, Lieutenant Daniels, Sergeant Moore, 79 rank and field, and 1 Maxim. Now the third group that went with them is a company Southern Nigerian regiment again. They went with Captain Kare, Lieutenant Matters, 79 rank and file, and 1 Maxim with 2,004 carriers, gun carriers. On 2nd December, the force reached Akuku and halted before the day. A message was sent to the chief of Onitsha Olona that the force was proceeding to their town the following day and would require food and water. They replied that 3 out of the 6 villages that comprised Onitsha Olona were willing to comply, but that the rest refused and would have nothing to do with the force. On arrival in the town, the column camped in the market square, and at 4 p.m., the commanding officer, together with 4 sections, marched to the 2 most turbulent quarters, Ihobi and Olo. In the latter place, the people offered resistance, that is in Olo. As the column approached the town of Ezi, all these are in Anyocha North local government area of Delta State. As the column approached the town of Ezi, it was gathered by a message from the chief desiring to meet with the commanding officer, but not long after, a hostile message followed from the town that the chief had fled into the bush, perhaps in fear of his people, who might have accused him of compromise. He, however, reappeared with some leading men of the town. For the talks with the commanding officer now, the chief ran away in Onitsha. Fearing now, the people they regard as chief are usually the kings of that community, although Onitsha particularly does not have a king. All right, what they have was chiefs. In this particular instance, they said the chiefs ran away into the bush for fear of his people, who are accusing him that he has compromised, that he has sold out. He has now aligned himself with the Europeans. His community people are accusing him, so the chief ran away and later reappeared again for the talks. For the AZ people, the meeting was a means of not only gaining time, but also of learning the position of government soldiers. Because of the intelligence received soon after by the commanding officer, an attack was launched by the government forces later in the day. This attack met considerably more opposition than had been anticipated. However, by late afternoon, the resistance had awakened and the town was burned down. The town of Az was burned down by the British. This is a colonial document that I'm reading. I'm not reading my own works. This is the works documented by Professor S.N. Wabara late. Now, they said the town of Az was later burned down that day. The town of Az is located in Anyocha North local government area of Delta State. Okay? So, let's continue. This attack met considerably more opposition than had been anticipated. However, by late afternoon, the resistance had weakened and the town was burned down. As the column was returning to camp, the Az people opened fire again, wounding 3 soldiers. It was not possible to retaliate because the Az were firing from the safety of the bush. On the 6th of December, the head men of the different villages were said to have made overtures of peace and asked for a 2-day truce to allow for surrender of the chiefs. While the fighting was in progress at Az, a meeting, the purpose of which was not stated, was held near the marketplace between the representatives of those quarters friendly to the government and 3 leaders of the Ekumeku society. When informed of the meeting, the district commissioner sent scouts to track down the and capture the 3 soldiers, or the 3 leaders. This was done and they were sentenced to banishment from the town. We are talking about the town of Az. The 3 community leaders who went to seek peace and make peace with the British forces were tracked down to their houses, arrested and banished from the town of Az. These are colonial documents, and I'm very glad that the British government here is referring to Az community as an Igbo town. All right, now I want us by the end of this intellectual engagement to find out why these places are regarded as Igbo communities and how later on, I don't understand how these people now started denying their Igbo origins. I don't understand. But let's continue. That's not the topic of this particular video. No sooner had the sentence been pronounced than one of the leaders, Duinku, cut himself loose from his guards and escaped into the bush. Apparently, he had not been disarmed, for the constable who made an unsuccessful attempt to catch him received a machete wound. Interesting. He surrendered eventually. The next destination was Owash, but now we are finished at Az Remember I told you, Ezi, Opale Nezi Chime is the origin of the name Ezi. Ezi is one of the sons of Ezechima, a returning Igbo who spent most of his life in Ado and then Benin, that is Idu, before he returned homewards and finally settled at Obio, where he died. Ezechima is the father of all Ezechima communities in Ezechima clan, including Obio, Iseluku, Onichubo, Onichuolona, Obompa, Onochamili, Oguta, and so many of them that are returning Igbos, not Bini people, as some people will wrongly assume. They will say they are Bini people. After all, they are using Ada and Eben. That doesn't define their origin. It was just influenced. Their origin is as Ndi Igbo, as they are the sons of Ezechima. We have now finished with Ezi community, where the fighting happened. Where the first shot was fired, you will later get to find out as well. Okay, I don't want to give up everything now, but let's continue. We are reading a colonial account written by the British themselves, documented in their gazettes, and then published by Professor S.N. Wabara, a renowned historian. We have now moved, the resistance has now moved from Ezi to Ogwashuku after capturing Dunku in Ezi. Dunku is one of the Ekumeku warriors who was captured in Ezi, and I said Ezi is an Ezechima community in Anocha North local government area of Delta State, no more than 5 minutes drive from Iseluku. Now the next destination was Ogwashi. On the 16th of December 1902, the main column of the army entered Iseluku. On the 18th, they reached Ogwashuku. Something is missing here, okay? That thing missing is that there's a community between Iseluku and Ogwashuku. That community was avoided for a reason. You will know that community later as well, and why it was avoided, because it's a no-go area. That community that was avoided is a no-go area. So how this contingent moved from Iseluku and found themselves in Ogwashuku without assessing that community is what still remains a mystery in this documentation. So something is missing here. How you moved from Ogwash and landed, how you moved from Ezi to Iseluku and then landed in Ogwash without documenting what happened in Ubuluku, the headquarters of Ekumeku. The actual headquarters of Ekumeku is Ubuluku. So how did you move from Iseluku to Ogwash without touching base at Ubuluku? Okay, so we continue. This is to show that the British themselves can also be very cunning. Okay? On the 18th, they reached Ogwash. There's 2 days journey from Iseluku to Ogwash. As a friendly gesture, the chief invited the force to camp at Ogwashuku, his headquarters, as in the Ezi incident. The people were opposed to the friendly attitude of their chief towards the soldiers and therefore refused to provide food and water. Furthermore, the other chiefs of the area refused to have a meeting with the divisional commissioner. Left with no alternative, the column marched to the Obo and Obodo villages, destroying everything before them. The only real resistance of the day was encountered at Opoma, where the inhabitants fired continually at the column as a reprisal to the town. The town was razed almost to the ground. The town of Ogwashuku was razed almost to the ground. Particularly now they are talking about Obobo in Ogwashuku. The Obobo and Obo villages of Ogwashuku were razed down to the ground by the British. Okay, please, this is discussing the Ekumeku colonial resistance by Igbo people of Enuani. If you are just seeing this video, kindly give it a thumbs up, double tap on the video to like it, and please share to your audience. Invite so many people as much as you can to come and watch this video and make contributions. We are reading a colonial document put down by the British missionaries themselves and the colonial government of British Nigeria and published by Professor S.N. Wabara. I've been able to access this book by being part of a library, a global library, where I was able to access the book. So I'm bringing it to you firsthand because I said this is an intellectual platform. It is not a place where we just offer opinions. We also read out intellectual-based articles to you. So they said the town of Ogwashuku now has been burned down to the ground because of the resistance that they showed. In addition to destroying property, the government force made every effort to capture the leaders of the Ekumeku society in Ogwashi. And by 24 December, 6 of the men gave themselves up to the divisional commissioner. The surrender of the men appeared to weaken further resistance, and so for 5 days the British force marched unopposed throughout the Ogwashuku villages. As the fate of the chiefs, most of whom were leaders of Ekumeku society, the High Commissioner of Southern Nigeria wrote in a dispatch to the Secretary of the colonies saying, "Several of the dissatisfied chiefs have been removed from the district, and I am taking some of them to Old Calabar for a period, where they will have an opportunity of seeing a more advanced state of civilization than exists in their own country, which on their return they may introduce among their own people." Now, some of the chiefs from Ogwashuku have now been captured. Those who also surrendered by themselves have now been exiled to Calabar. And the district commissioner is writing to the colonial head in Lagos saying that this is the action he is taking, exiling some chiefs from Ogwashuku and Igbo town to Calabar. Kindly double tap on this video to give it thumbs up, help it to rank well on the algorithm so that more people can get to see these facts that we are reading out. Some people, when we say these things, say it is revisionism. This is not revisionism. This is a colonial document written in 1902, and I'm just reading it out to you freely. Kindly double tap on the video to give it thumbs up. They are saying whether the chiefs feel the hopes of the High Commissioner or not, or they are not saying the truth, it will be judged in the light of subsequent events. This is very correct, because they have not really captured the main person that I am looking out to hear his name in Ogwashuku. There's a main person in Ogwashuku who was leader of Ekumeku Resistance. His name was Nzekwe. I am waiting to see his name in this document, and I have not. They are just stating here that most of the leaders of the resistance have surrendered, and I have not seen Nzekwe here. Nzekwe did not just surrender. So let me just read. Let me continue reading. The real objective of the Asaba expedition, the suspension of the Ekumeku society, was not successful. Apart from the arrest and subsequent banishment of some of its leaders, the society continued to be a problem and was described as an anti-European club, which had long been a source of frequent trouble to the government, the Royal Niger Company, and the Christian missions. Its aim were said to be 1. The abolition of the white man and all favorably disposed towards him, and the substitution of themselves as the government of the country. 2. The murder of all native Christians who would not renounce Christianity and swear loyalty to the Ekumeku society. This is like the olden days version of people who resist colonialism. They were against anything European. They were against anything Christianity. So even their own people who had become Christians are enemies to them. This is the Ekumeku. This is the rules of being a member of the Ekumeku society. Because they believed, Oyibona, the whites should go. They don't want anything to do with the Europeans. This is the first point of hatred for Igbo. 1902. In the year 1902, all Europeans have been informed that there's a group in Igbo land called Ekumeku who are against any European country They call them anti-European club. Now they are in their homeland, for clarity's sake. These people are in their homeland. They are civilized. They make weapons. They feed. They make artworks. They do all kinds of things by themselves. And then somebody brings war to them. Somebody brings trouble to them. Somebody tries to topple their government. Somebody brings a new religion to them. And they are resisting it. And you see them as barbarians. Who is the real barbarian? You left your country to my country, brought war upon me. Then I am the bad person. You are the good person. This is just what the European government did to Africa, exemplified in what is happening in this part of Igbo land. I'll continue reading and stop offering my opinions, okay, so that it doesn't get boring. That the society had not been altogether suppressed in 1903 became apparent in 1904 when it was forced into an open rebellion by the corrupt nature of the native court. The district commissioner at Asaba was unable to investigate the circumstances leading to 1904 rebellion because the members of the society refused to meet him and the divisional commissioner to try to settle the matter peacefully. The society made an arbitrary move by attacking indigenous Christians at Idumujona. Now I know they mean Idumujona. The members of Ekumeku society had attacked indigenous Christians in Idumujono because they felt these indigenous Christians were the ones giving out information about them to the British government. Okay? On 16th January 1904 was when this happened. Similar attacks were made on the church missionary stations at Onitsha and at Omega. Wow. These people are mentioning totally pure Enuani societies and communities. Idumujono is very close to Atomega. Okay? The Roman Catholic Mission houses at Ezi and the government courthouses at Onitsha and Ubuluku were destroyed. Now, this is the first time of mentioning the real place, Ubuluku. The attacks reached a climax with the murder and ill treatment of chiefs who were well disposed towards the government and some native Christians. Now, chiefs who were giving out information to the government or who were seen as being friendly with the government became enemies of members of the Ekumeku society. I don't want to relate this to what is happening presently in the northern part of Nigeria, where you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to relate it because they are unrelatable. Now, these are people who were living in their community, a very peaceful community, a very nice and calm people, a very peace-loving people, a very hospitable people, suddenly met Europeans who want to dominate them, impose Christianity on them, call their culture barbaric, destroy their shrines. The war against the Ekumeku people was not just war against people. It was war against our deities as well, as you saw in Onitsha axis. They believed some of the deities were favoring Ekumeku, so they were attacking deities as well. And these were our religious centers, the things that our people hold or held very sacred. So it became a problem. It got to the stage where if you see any person, any Igbo person supporting Europeans anymore, that Igbo person, despite the fact that they are our brothers or our sisters, became enemies to Ekumeku members. That is what is stated here. So I'll have to continue reading, but they have just told us that the courts in Ubuluku, Onitsha, Ezi, and the rest, and Atoma, were destroyed by Ekumeku members. I wanted to say I support that. I think I was there. The attacks reached a climax, okay, with the murder and ill treatment of chiefs who were well disposed towards the government and some native Christians. At Idumujuboko, the Reverend Edward Dennis of the Church Missionary Society was warned in time by native Christians and so escaped, as did the Roman Catholic fathers stationed at Asaba, who were visiting at Iseluku, the timely arrival of both Mr. H.R. Crawford, the divisional commissioner, and J. Davidson, the assistant district commissioner, with a small force of soldiers and police, saved the mission station at Iseluku from destruction. Now you see what they were talking about, that there were indigenous people giving information to the government. This is what laid out here. They had already laid ambush for Crawford, and some of them, Reverend Father Edward Davids, who was visiting Iseluku, but the indigenous Christians sent a message to them that you should escape, oh, these people are coming. Oh. This is the reason why the members of the Ekumeku were angry and were also attacking their own fellow Igbo brothers and sisters, Enuani people, who were giving out information to the government. This is just like what you see in movies, but it is playing out here real. Okay? Now I have to continue. They said now that they got some reinforcement and were able to escape because indigenous Christians had given them information to escape. The expedition under Captain Iron Hog arrived at Iseluku on 18th of January. We have now moved from December to January. They are still fighting. I remember I told you that it took 4 days to capture the Oba of Benin and send him away to Calabar. Now we are discussing war that is actively being fought from December. We are now in January, and today is January 18. They are looking at January 18, 1905 now. It should be 1905 because it was 1904. The following information. The expedition under Captain Iron Hog arrived in Iseluku on 18 January, and following information that the Ekumeku forces were positioned in 2 areas of the district, one at Ubuluku, west of Iseluku, and the other at Akuku, east of Onitsha. He developed his column accordingly. Now they are mentioning Ubuluku now actively because that is where the headquarters of the Ekumeku is. The battle, which lasted until 12th of March, which is about 3 months, started in January, February, March. 3 months of actively fighting around Ubuluku and Iseluku resulted in heavy casualties on both sides. Despite the severe opposition, the government force reportedly captured about 250 persons who were supposed to be leaders of the Ekumeku society. Now, after the resistance of 3 months at Ubuluku-Iseluku axis, 250 people who were believed to be loyal to the Ekumeku fighters, who were believed to be Ekumeku warriors, were captured. To ensure permanent peace, some of the captured leaders were removed to an unknown destination, and heavy fines were imposed on the 29 villages that had found and fought on the side of the Ekumeku society. The punishment was considered a blow to the existence of the society, but whether it was a death or death blow that had been inflicted was yet to be known. However, the native courts that occasioned the rising were suspended. The native courts that caused all this, because what caused all this was injustice, corruption. The native courts were giving out judgments that the people were seeing as oppression and intimidation. Somebody does something to me, you brought a court. I report that into your court and I couldn't get justice. That was how this resistance against the British government started. And it was started by Ndi Igbo. Now this will tell you 2 things. It is not today that Ndi Igbo started defiance. And some people try to credit it to Ekumeku people. Some people try to credit it to Anioma people. This is not Anioma people. They have not mentioned anywhere outside anyone here. All what I'm reading here is centered towards Onitsha, Asaba, Ubuluku, Iseluku. These are Enuani communities of Igbo land. I'm not saying it is not Anioma, it is Anioma, but where in Anioma? Because when you see people laying claim to things and trying to use it to discredit Ndi Igbo, I laugh at them, at their ignorance. When you say Anioma, you're talking Ika, you're talking Okwani, and you're talking Enuani. And what we are reading here is purely Enuani and other side of Igbo land, which is Onitsha. For this document I'm reading is not by ourselves. It is by the government themselves of Europeans. It is by the British colonial government. They are the ones who put this down. So I'm going to read now a continuation, which is the death of O.S. Curry. Curry. Who Curry is, you will know now. What led to his death, you will also know. If you are just seeing this video, this is my first time because people have been sending me messages to say, discuss Ekumeku Resistance. I say, if I discuss Ekumeku Resistance, it's like a big elephant. You only draw it from the angle you're seeing it from. If I am to talk about Ekumeku, I'll be talking Ugunuku, Ogwashuku, because that is my axis. That is the place I am from. That is where their story is very conversant to me. But I am reading it now from a government colonial document written by the British themselves. It is going to be biased towards the British, if there is any bias. Not biased towards me. Thank you so much, my brother. Please, if you're just seeing this video, double tap on it to give it thumbs up. Also share to your audience. Let so many people come and watch and find out how the hatred for Igbo by the Europeans, I'm not saying by the British, started, because the British painted us like people who formed an association. They called it a camp, an anti-European organization is what they called it. They didn't say it is a resistant organization, an organization that is trying to resist colonialism. They said no, it is an organization set up by Igbo to resist the Europeans. That way, France will join, Spain will join, England will join, Italy will join, Germany will join, all of them will join forces to fight against Igbo. This is what British did to Igbo. And this is 1902 that I'm reading its documents. I'm not reading a document of yesterday. 1902 is how many years old now? 1902 is how many years ago? Such a very long time ago that these people have documented things to say, if you see these people, fight them because they don't like you. But all we were trying to do was defend our land, not really resist the Europeans, but defend our land, defend our culture, defend our religion. That is what we are still trying to do till today. So I'm going